organized crime whips ass. Oh, okay, well, like, not real actual crime, but the stuff you see in movies and TV shows. The big baller, wise-talking, cool gangsters who run the streets, cities, and sometimes countries. People that, despite doing the big evil, are just impossible to truly hate because of how charismatic they are. Growing up, I was heavy into these types of stories. My dad was only like 17 when he had me, and by the time I was 8 and him 25-ish, he decided, you're mature enough to watch cool shit with me. And from that point on, we watched The Sopranos, Goodfellas, Scarface, the Godfather trilogy. He was obviously really into that whole genre, and being an impressionable kid who was with his cool guy dad, I ended up falling in love with them too. Like, come on, it doesn't matter how evil Tony Soprano, Tommy DeVito, or Nino Brown are. They're so fun to watch that dumbasses like me see it and go, damn, Mafia life really is the coolest. I don't know, I just can't help it. So, that said, imagine my surprise and excitement when back in 2014-ish during my shonen binge-watching phase, I discovered a series on Crunchyroll called Hitman Reborn. It being described as a shonen battle series where a home tutor hitman flies in from Italy to Japan, him training the next in line leader to eventually take over his big mafia family. And buddy, I slammed on that first episode, starting a now 10-year-long love for this series. And with that said, what really is Hitman Reborn? Why is it seemingly so popular online and also kinda underrated at the same time? And as a series itself, does it live up to its premise of being an Italian mafia-based shonen manga? Well, today, let's dive into the world of the Vangala, created and drawn by the absolute queen, Akira Amano. A series that, while stumbling in a few places with its plot, is easily probably in my top 10 manga of all time. And you know the drill, hit the likes, the subs, peep the Patreon, drop a comment if you love Reborn. YouTube got kinda mad at me for using the anime OST in this video, so any support is appreciated. Now let's go. Katekyo Hitman Reborn, or Home Tutor Hitman Reborn, is a manga that was created and drawn by Akira Amano for Shonen Jump, running weekly from May of 2004 to November of 2012 for 42 total volumes. It actually just recently hitting its 20th anniversary, and in those 20 long years, the series has become a smash hit. Over 30 million volumes sold worldwide in over 200 episode anime adaptation, 5 light novels, more than 20 video games with Suna himself appearing in Jump crossover fighters. You got stage plays, card games, endless merch, like you name it, Reborn's got it. With the fanbase for the series spreading loudly across the world still to this day. You know how many fan doujins there are of Yamamoto, Gokudera, and Hibari going big dick mode on each other? A lot! And that is how you know when a series has some shooters out there. But despite all that and the manga being so popular aside, when it comes to Reborn as a modern staple of Jump, I do feel like it's sometimes left behind in the conversation, and while still having those agenda pushers out there like I had said, there's still a large part of me that feels like Reborn has been heavily underrated after all of these years. And it's for reasons I think I kinda understand. But before we talk more about those reasons, the hell is Reborn actually even about? What is a home tutor hitman, and why does he look like that? So first up, let's take a look at the first few chapters and set up what exactly the plot of Reborn is and where it could possibly go. Tsunayoshi Sawada, or just Suna, is a loser. Nicknamed by the kids at school as No Good Suna, dude's weak, kinda dumb, clumsy, and just all around a perfect sitcom bully bait material. He doesn't have any friends, any goals, anything at all really. He just goes to school and cowers through his daily life, trying to get by day to day without looking stupid in front of everyone else. And meanwhile, across the oceans and mountains over in Italy, the world's most famous hitman named Reborn has a new job. His orders coming in from the 9th boss of the Vongola Mafia family, the baby assassin with big deep black eyes grabbing his chameleon Leon and heading to Japan, blasting his way into Suna's house and declaring that he is next in line to take over the Vongola, to lead this Mafia family as the 10th generation boss. Suna, being the, cowardly loser that he is, freaks out and tries to run from this weird baby hitman who says he's being forced into Mafia. But you can't escape the world's greatest assassin. Reborn, already having cleared things with his mom to stay, infiltrated his school to set up hideouts throughout it, used multiple disguises and aliases to weasel his way into classrooms, and is now forcing Suna to get involved with things he never would have before. Some bully dipshit challenging Suna to a kendo match mainly just so he can expose his balls in front of the school, and most importantly, Kyoko Sasagawa, the girl Suna likes. Obviously, being a big wimp who can't do shit, Suna is probably gonna get his ass kicked. So Reborn, being his new home tutor hitman, springs into action by turning his chameleon into a gun and shooting Suna in the head. R.I.P. Thankfully, it was a special bullet, a bullet made for the Vongola bloodline, the Dying Will bullet. It killing quote-unquote Suna and focusing his final thoughts on a dying wish, a goal he wanted to complete before he died. And Suna is reborn, him busting out of all of his clothes minus boxers and, out of nowhere, spewing a large flame from his forehead, powering up from that dying wish, that dying willpower, and beating the dog piss out of the kendo bully. And now, since he had a close explosion and beat down a dude despite everyone knowing Suna to be so weak, he's got a whole new reputation. Some people being nervous around him and others finally taking any interest in him at all. This only happening thanks to Reborn's headshot. Suna not exactly accepting the idea of Mafia training or being the next family boss, but now much more open to spending his formerly meaningless days with Reborn, legitimately trying to learn and grow. The duo from here getting into all kinds of gag situations where more Mafia members make their way to Japan, like Dino, Bianchi, and Lambo, while also making new friends that could be potential family members for the Vongola under Suna. Reborn pulling strings in the background to both help Suna and his new friends grow into those potential Mafia roles. But, like I assume most people already know, this daily life calmness does not last. And around volume 8 to 9, the series completely shifts from a total gag manga to an all-out shonen power battle series. Suna and his newfound family fighting off other Mafia groups, warping to the future, and even confronting the reality of existence itself, and how these 7 talking babies are connected to it. Them being called the Arco Baleno, the Italian word for rainbow. The manga growing and adapting from here to become the worldwide sensation it still is to this day. So with that setup, what makes Reborn that sensation? What is so worth talking about in a shonen gag manga turned power battle series? Well, the few things. But before we take a look at the plot itself, there's one aspect to Reborn that is easily, no question, its most popular feature. And that is, of course, Akira Amano's absolutely breathtaking artwork. It being the reason I wanted to watch the anime, read the manga, and eventually make this video. If you've followed this channel for any length of time now, which thank you if so, I love you, you'll know when it comes to this space, I kinda prefer manga over anime usually. Not dismissing anime as an art form or anything, obviously. I just like raw pictures. And when it comes to Reborn, this might possibly be the series with the most sauce ever made. Because goddamn does Amano know how to whip up some of the absolute best drawings in manga. When it comes to her artwork, both in Reborn and also with everything she's done since, there's a certain uniqueness and soft beauty to it that I think is kind of unlike anyone else in the game. Back in my Tenjo Tenge Cross Air Gear video, my biggest praise for Oh Great was his mastery of facial detail, mixing with absolutely insane design ideas and over-the-top flair. And that's a thing I 1000% feel is just as loud here in Reborn. Amano's art having this level of fluidity and motion to it that is so smooth. A lot of her characters having this wavy hair and roaring flames flowing with this total realism, but also matching it with this pure cartoon style that looks so light and full of passion. Her characters are all drawn to have their own unique features, of course, but layered on top are the absolute coolest design flares to separate and make each person stand out more than before, to make each new piece of gear look cooler than the last, to take her cast from their solid early designs all the way to being some of the most beautifully drawn characters ever in Jump. Her art-focused shots all have this masterful use of heavy black shading and bright white lighting to make each character seem so much cooler, more mysterious or stoic, like they're walking under bright moonlight or a big spotlight. The chapter cover pages being weekly drops of Amano just flexing her ability to draw 10 out of 10 character art. Every major cast member has tons of pieces to their design that define who they are, with Amano growing them over the series as her artwork got stronger to make some of the coolest and dopest design choices in all of fiction. Goku Dera, Suna's shaggy-haired right-hand man and debatable lover, him wearing bandoliers of dynamite with a cigarette lit in his mouth and eventually blasting dope-ass arm cannons to blow away the enemies of the family. Yamamoto, who goes from, I would say, a kind of generic anime guy design to being this totally defined and hella handsome samurai, cutting down Suna's enemies with his multiple swords. Hibari, the quiet badass with jet black hair that protects their school with his tonfa. Every single shot of him in the series exuding a total "don't fuck with me" energy. These are just 3 characters, and looking at them over the course of the series, it's so easy to tell how much Amano's art grows and how she in turn grows those characters as well. Suna actually being the biggest example, going from his big hair goofy self to one of the coolest main character designs ever put in Shonen Jump. And meanwhile, on the total reverse of this hyper beautiful art, Amano is constantly creating some totally adorable chibi designs that never leave the series. And I mean shit, you can tell she really just loves drawing them. The Arco Baleno as a concept in general being badass babies is something that absolutely comes from a person that loves cute shit. One of the biggest showcases of this progression is right on the front of the box itself, the actual covers of the manga. Them starting basic with well-drawn shots of the characters on white backgrounds, but progressing so far past this and becoming colorful, beautiful, eye-catching, logo-popping bangers. Legit, sometimes I just scroll through them on my phone and admire them because holy shit, dude, this right here, these right here, that is my exact aesthetic sensibilities distilled down to a book cover, and I fucking love it. Like look at Suna on the cover of volume 20 and tell me this isn't one of the most badass shots you've ever seen. Fuck you, don't even try and argue. Oh, and also, she knows one of the dopest things you can do in a manga/anime is put your cast in baller ass suits. Something she even makes part of the plot when the Vongala battle armor is revealed to literally be suits and ties on some real classy Mafia type shit. God, this rules. styles. Now, I will say, her style is definitely hers, to the extent that once you know it, you can never unsee it. And what I really mean by that is, I watched Psycho Pass without knowing shit about it, and I immediately said, hey, is that girl Suna when Akane was on screen? With Kogami basically being spiky hair Hibari. Like, yeah, I could tell right away that she did those designs, it's pretty blatant. So I guess you can criticize her use of similar characteristics over her series, but I also love Hiro Mashima, who just boldly reuses whole character designs over and over, so I don't really give a shit about this. But when stepping back and looking at all of Amano's art, the obvious peak of her talent comes in her many color pages that fill up Hitman Reborn. Her having 2 art books dedicated just to color art. And this is where the Reborn bullet hit me directly in the soul. Bro, I love color art. I've praised it in my Oh Great videos, Soul Eater and Doro Hey Doro videos, probably all of my videos. Shit, I love comic books as much as I love manga, and the way an inker can take a penciler's art to a whole new field of design and depth blows my ass away. X-Men video coming soonish, I gotta read all of it, and I mean all of it first. So when a mangaka is able to take their art that's almost always in black and white to that next level, adding a whole new layer of style into it, that's where those already amazing drawings excel into a new type of art itself. And with Amano in Reborn, holy shit dude, there's nothing else like them. The color palette choices, the outfit designs and flair surrounding the characters, making use of that earlier mentioned black shading and white lighting to mix with this watery and transparent color, taking her already beautiful character art and elevating it to be some of my most favorite in all of manga. This is one of those situations where I feel like I could go on and on about how pretty, how cool it is, but the easiest and most to the point thing I can do to prove it is just show it, because honestly, words do it no justice, man. Of course, this is a shonen battle series, so outside of the art being beautiful as it is in the more passive moments, how does it stack up during combat? How does it translate into the big action moments? Honestly, I think it does extremely well, but with a few restrictions. Hitman Reborn, being a big combat series, obviously has to have shonen powers. Them coming in with the use of the Dying Will Flame early on and growing over the series to all sorts of things, both in good ways and totally random ones. During the early gag chapters, Suna, like I had said, gets shot in the dome to unleash a flame of willpower from his forehead, powering him up and doing whatever it is he needs to do. Using this framework, and with the introduction of Mukuro Rokudo, the illusion-using gang leader who has it out for the Vongala family, Suna begins the real steps into shonen powerhood and gets shot with a criticism bullet, Reborn blasting him in the head once again and unlocking his hyper dying will mode, the external dying will that made him go wild before now becoming internal, turning Suna into a cool guy shonen main character, him blasting jet streams of flames from his hands to fly around and beat the hell out of his enemies. That fire on his forehead flickering due to Suna jumping back and forth between, plus and zero modes. I don't know, it's got an explanation, but also it's kind of just shonen power mumbo jumbo, although it's really cool, so who cares? Suna able to eventually take that power and go into minus mode, reversing and freezing enemy flames and encasing them in unmeltable ice. This whole flame concept eventually grows far past this, and defines itself by there being 7 types of flame, the things that will go on to be used by the whole cast. Them being sky, rain, storm, cloud, sun, mist, and thunder. Each character having a type of flame innate to them, like being an enhancer with Nin or having a certain type of chakra. Now, in all honesty, the flame type doesn't matter too much like it would in those other series, and is more so just kind of an indication of the type of personality the user has. Things like Mukuro tricking his enemies with misty illusions, Yamamoto's sword flowing like rain, and Suna being the sky that watches over the other elements, or in other words, his family members. So while the type of flame doesn't really matter much in specific combat situations, that doesn't make him any less cool. I mean, shit, seeing purple flames come out of Hibari while he beats ass looks raw as hell, and really, that's all that matters. These flame powers are channeled through rings given to members of a Mafia family, like the Vongala rings Suna and crew eventually receive. That ring itself being both a symbol of their role in the family and also is a medium to produce their flames. This going on to introduce the next aspect of combat, ring boxes. So as if the flame powers weren't enough, due to the events in the story sending Suna and the family 10 years into the future, well, we'll talk about that here in just a minute, they are introduced to the new form of future fighting, taking your Mafia ring and sticking it into a box like a key. The box popping open and revealing wacky-ass shonen powers. Both the enemies and now Suna's gang using the Vongala boxes to upgrade their abilities. Personally, I both like and dislike the boxes for a few reasons. On one hand, they take a power system that was already smoothly developing and add a whole new, kinda random element to it. These boxes holding powers that require certain types of flame to open, causing the combat to switch more from battles based on semi-realistic attacks that are rooted in their flame power's overall nature, to big power moves that fill pages with flashy effects, and massive attacks that are just way more outlandish than before. And while I do think it's unfortunate in some ways that the close encounter combat changes to be more like a standard shonen power series, the boxes themselves are so cool and the attacks inside of them are so fun to see in action that I still think the change up is solid overall. But what if those boxes actually opened up and created Pokemon-ass animals that combine and fight with the user? Meaning that, out of nowhere, each main cast member now has an animal partner. Kinda random, right? Oh, hang on. But what if then the cast went back in time to the normal days, and some old guy appeared out of nowhere to both upgrade the rings to new power levels, and supply Vongala battle gear? The cast now just ditching those box weapons and going back to more personal attack battles, but now mixed with the explosive progression of the cast. Kinda random again, right? So obviously, the power system of Reborn is, over the top and all over the place, both in its general concept, but also with the constant new additions and rules to it from all these new forms and gear that are introduced. Now, honestly speaking, I do think it's a bit too much at times, or just kind of overall random. I still don't get the points of the animals really, other than Amano just wanted to draw them. Suna's is called Nuts, so there's that, I guess. But at the same time, the series presents these power-ups and combat changes in both fun and usually beautifully drawn ways. Like, I can't deny it that the powers themselves are cool as hell, and the Vongala gear does feel like it rights the ship after the box weapons started to drift off a bit. Also while looking like some of the coolest shit in any manga ever. So overall, I do think Reborn has a solid, if not overly dense, power system. The thing is about this combat, the art, and the whole series in general, is that there's a major red flag planted in it. A big ass shadow that covers almost the whole series. And it's one that affects it in every aspect to specifically non-Japanese readers. years. Despite Reborn having its big sales and massive popularity, the series unfortunately has almost no good way to completely experience it here in the West. Well, in North America at least, other countries are lucky enough to get it. Now, going back in time a bit, Hitman Reborn actually did have an English release under Viz Media, on shelves next to Naruto and One Piece. The thing is, back around 2009 to 2010, while America was still going through a big economic crash, Viz had to restructure and lay off around 60 to 70 workers, stating then that none of the product line would be affected, but that just straight up wasn't true. Them cutting out and canceling series that, sales-wise, just didn't stack up to those heavier hitters. Things like Gintama, Kurohime, Bobobo, not Zatch Bell. That was another reason that I covered in this video. And of course, Reborn. It getting to volume 16, promoting an upcoming release in the last page for 17, and never actually releasing it. The manga going out of print here in America and the volumes becoming expensive collector's items. I just happened to get lucky and find these ones I have over time. Side story fun fact, before 2020 and the collector market exploded, you could find almost any manga you wanted at a secondhand shop for like $3 a pop. But now, everyone scalps them for big cash because of the popularity of the whole medium, and this shit sucks, dude. More than half of this room, I probably only paid around $5 a volume for. That was the Wild West of manga. That was the good old days. God damn, I miss that. Anyway, with all of that said, reading it in an official way here in America is a hard thing to do, and one that's not even complete. So of course, your next option would be go online, right? Well, on top of that, the scans for the series, as you might have seen from some of the shots I've used, are just overall not good. The quality ranges from volume to volume, sometimes even chapter to chapter. And it's never really better than fine, with the worst of the scans looking so blurry and being translated so poorly that it's hard to even recommend reading the series. And that fucking sucks, dude. Online, you can find raw scans up to volume 17. I actually ended up upscaling a lot of them myself to edit for this video and try to get around that issue the best I could, which took way longer than I planned. Hashtag like, comment, subscribe. But overall, as of right now, Reborn's manga sits in a really shitty place to try and get into. The quality affecting both the story's enjoyment and some combat scenes, like where this series is so founded in speed and movement. When the scan itself is blurry, those lines look messy, the shaded parts look washed out, and moments that should be hype as hell fall flat through no fault of their own. Of course, there's another option, the one that got me, and I'm sure most of you here, into the series as well. And that would be the 201 episode anime made by a now seemingly defunct studio called Artland. It covering around 30 of the 42 total volumes before ending in 2010, 2 years before the manga concluded. Like I had said earlier, this anime is what got me into the series to begin with, watching it back in like 2014 on Crunchyroll and loving it, despite having some issues with both parts of the series and anime itself. The thing is, when I finished watching it, I just moved on and never looked at the manga, not even knowing there were more arcs to cover. Only time through online osmosis I learned that 2 more arcs remained unanimated and supposedly they whipped ass. So during Hell Year 2020, my then girlfriend, now wife, were shacked up inside watching shonen anime, and the wheel of what to watch next landed on Reborn. Me rewatching all of the episodes again with her, and this time finishing the manga afterward. On this second watch, with me actively comparing the manga to the anime while going through it and finishing the whole series after, I realized that despite still loving it, damn dude, it's pretty rough. Large chunks of the fight have lackluster animation. The pacing can be abysmal at times. It's hella censored, like it's a long list of things that upset me. It's not without its charms, one of the biggest to me being the OST. The Vongala theme already being used in the video, and this goofy daily life theme just being the song that plays in my head while I do random chores around the house, or watch my puppy run around the yard. And overall, I think it nails the gag chapters pretty well. Which, your own mileage varies on those. Plenty of people online start the series due to seeing the dope shit later on, and within 10 episodes are posting on Reddit, "When does it get good?" Which, I like the daily life arc, so can't help you there, chief. Also, it has 2 short filler arcs in the last stretch of the series that, surprisingly, I think are pretty good. Both only really existed to kill time so the future arc could finish in the manga, Suna and crew dealing with some Arco Baleno goofiness and trials for them left by the previous Vongala families. But it gives the main cast a chance to work together in ways they hadn't in a long time, while also digging back to the gag roots of the series. Really good shit in my opinion, I fuck with them. But with all of that said, between the overall lacking quality of the anime that doesn't even cover the whole series, and the honestly shitty scans from start to finish, Reborn is a hard sell to get some people into, and I can't really blame them. But looking past that, once you dive in, whether it's the anime, the manga, or a mix of both, how does the actual story of the series hold up? Suna's weird-ass adventure to becoming Mafia boss taking all sorts of shonen twists and big power-scaling turns. So with this, we're gonna get spoilery. At first, I'm just gonna talk about the arcs the anime has covered, the Varia and future arcs mostly, but then going deeper on the inheritance ceremony and Arco Baleno battle royale. So I'll give you another warning before we get to the manga only talk just in case. I do also want to cover some of Amano's work past Reborn at the end, so here's a time code to jump to that if you want to avoid all spoilers, and I'll warn you again when the anime portion is wrapped up. Cool? Aight. So like I've said, the series kicks off with 8 volumes worth of gag chapters before really becoming a shonen battle series. And despite this arc being kind of disliked online by a big portion of the fan base, I think it isn't bad at all. And it sets up a lighthearted air for the cast that they'll eventually have to fight for if they want it back. These chapters introducing the people that go on to make up the Vongala family. Gokudera, the Italian-born right-hand man of Suna who is violently dedicated to his boss, basically being the Smithers to Suna's Mr. Burns, getting hella jealous if any other person even comes close to Suna, lighting up both his cigarette and a stick of dynamite to blow away anyone the gang needs handled. Yamamoto, the baseball-loving sushi shop-working samurai who defends Suna with his blade power, forever being friendly and lighthearted even when staring down killer assassins from other families, his sword flowing like water as it cuts down enemies. Sasagawa, the over-the-top boxing freak who is locked in on being extreme, him being the older brother to Suna's love interest Kyoko, his unstoppable attitude shining bright as he boxes the shit out of anyone willing to step into the ring. Lambo, the baby assassin from the Bovino family, who at first is just a gag character that tries to assassinate Reborn, but when using his 10-year bazooka, swaps places with his future self. The cooler and more level-headed Lambo showing up to both be a total dipshit and to help the Vongala when needed. Hibari, the Vongala's guard dog, who actually doesn't give a shit about this Mafia nonsense and just wants to bite strong enemies to death, both his strength and ratings and popularity polls always being the highest in the series. And lastly, the first major enemy of the manga, Mukuro, and his body host Crone, a frail girl who is missing half of her internal organs, but by letting Mukuro use her as a medium while he remains locked up in Mafia prison after losing his fight with Suna, taken and sealed away underground by the Vendici, a shadowy group that upholds a Mafia law. He uses long-range illusions to trick Chrome's body into thinking it has those missing organs. Them living a symbiotic existence together until Mukuro can hopefully one day escape from his test tube cell and get revenge on Suna. Together, these 7 make up the main Vongola family, them being guided by the home tutor hitman himself, Reborn. The first major arc of the series being a battle tournament between a rival assassin group in the Vongola family, the fan favorite Varia, a splinter cell of Vongola led by the 9th boss's illegitimate son, Zanzis. One of the coolest dudes in fiction, I fucking love him, rebelling against the Vongola after finding out he wasn't the real son of the 9th boss, and by Mafia law was not allowed to be in line for taking control of the family. Him taking his crew and deciding to overthrow the Vongola by force. Them fighting against Suna's family in one-on-one tournament matches to see who gains control of the Vongola rings. And by extension, the entire Vongola family itself. This is where the series becomes a true battle shonen. And in my opinion, this arc is everything that is great about Reborn done perfectly. The manga is, of course, a Japanese shonen series that is aimed at kids. So it's not like I was expecting the Mafia aspect to be that involved, you know what I mean? But with the Varia arc, it grabs that idea and fully cashes in on it, taking the cast it had been collecting and forcing them into a massive battle with a rival family full of dope characters. People like Zanzis and Squalo. The Vongola both winning and losing battles while everyone involved gets to show off their cool-ass power-ups and dedication to Suna. The arc capping off with Suna himself getting a killer battle against Zanzis that in both manga and anime whips total ass. And while he still doesn't accept the idea of being the 10th boss, Suna fully steps into the footsteps of Vongola Primo, the first boss, who just so happens to look exactly like Suna, with the rest of Primo's family also looking the same as Suna's, beating Zanzis down and winning the rings for his crew, unwillingly taking the next step to becoming the boss. And while I think this arc is all around perfect, mixing the big battles with really interesting Mafia aesthetics and Italian coolness, from here forward is where I feel like while Amano's art just gets better with each chapter, the plot itself is full of peaks and valleys. Early in the series, a one-off gag chapter introduces a character named Shoichi Iri, him accidentally getting involved with Lambo and his 10-year bazooka before the story just moves on to more gag chapters. Amano would bring this character back with the creation of the Future arc. Reborn accidentally being bazooka blasted into the future like Lambo, but instead of a 10-year older version of Reborn coming back, nothing comes back at all, Reborn himself going missing in the future. Suna, worried for his tutor, blasts himself 10 years forward as well and wakes up in a coffin. The 10-year older Gokudera finding the younger boss and explaining that in this future, Suna is dead. The Vongola were wiped out and a rival family had taken over the world, before Gokudera himself is suddenly swapped with his 10-year younger self. The duo coming to realize that they're trapped here in the future, and it seems to be due to the planning of the earlier mentioned Shoichi and the new big arc villain, Byakuran, pretty boy leader of the Milfior family. Him basically ruling the world with Shoichi as his lead scientist, leaving Suna and the remaining Vongola to take Byakuran down and try and save this fucked up future. And here is where the issues with the plot really begin to take a hold. I'm a big fan of time skips. They're one of my favorite plot devices in manga, just taking the cast and world itself, jumping ahead a few years to cut out potentially boring parts, and getting straight to the cool new shit, the design changes and big power-ups. Naruto to Shippuden, post-Marineford in One Piece, Dragon Ball to Z, the fucking awful one in Fairy Tail that changes absolutely nothing. It's a trope that I love to see, and here in Reborn, while not being a time skip by technical standards, Suna going 10 years into this now dystopian Mafia-ruled future is really cool. Seeing other cast members as their future selves like we had seen with Lambo and E-Pen and how they had grown stronger could be a potentially fantastic addition to this arc, letting them fight as real-ass Mafia members to protect their young boss. Except for plot reasons, almost the entire main future cast is transported back 10 years, while their younger selves jump ahead to make up the party members during the actual future arc. Now, maybe this is just a big personal complaint, but seeing glimpses of these cool future Vongala and how they could have been in these battles, only to swap them with the kids we know and the series never really giving any more time to those future versions, kinda deflated a big part of my interest in this arc. Sure, maybe I'm being pedantic, but the reason you go to the future in anime is to see cool future shit. And in Reborn, I feel like taking a huge portion of that future aspect directly away from the plot just left a bad taste in my mouth. Outside of that, you have the earlier mentioned ring boxes, the warriors of the family using their flamed up rings to open these decorative boxes that unleash big shonen powers. And while I do feel like overall it's a bit too much at times, especially considering how the story just abandons them after this arc, they are really cool looking and give an excuse for Amano to show off cool attacks that would otherwise be a bit too outlandish, like Gamma's Pool Q Lightning Ball Blast or Goku Dera's Systemia CAI, him using multiple flames with multiple boxes to create multiple varieties of big attacks. So with these things said, how is the actual plot of the arc? How does this future jumping Mafia family battle stack up to the earlier tournament against the Varia? The Milfior family and the future arc in general are both cool as hell in tons of ways, but also just kind of at the same time. The earlier issues with character swapping and Vongala boxes aside, the plot itself just feels kind of slow here. The Vongala fighting against a few Milfior family members who aren't that interesting, them more so just existing so Sasegawa, Gokudera, and Yamamoto can show off their boxes against chump-ass enemies. Gamma excluded, he rules, this guy cool. Meanwhile, Suna meets Spanner, a mechanic for the Milfior that betrays his family to work with the Vongala. Suna spending what feels kind of like a really long time going between training arc to training arc, which isn't always the most entertaining, but caps off with Spanner giving Suna both the wireless headphones to keep in contact during battle, and synthetic contact lenses that help Suna use his flame powers better, letting him sink his hands in the output of the flames to blast off his X-Burner. Basically a signature move that unleashes a jet stream cannon of flame out of one hand while using the other to blast in the opposite direction so he doesn't throw himself backwards from the X-Burner's force. This is both dope as hell because not only is the move just super cool, Suna's new design upgrades from the headphones and lenses look so good. Amano once again flexing her unnatural ability to create only the coolest shit. Suna and crew using these power-ups to storm the Milfior base and fighting against the Funeral Reefs, Byakuran's elite guard, confronting Shoichi since he was the scientist that developed this technology to keep Suna and gang trapped here in the future. And despite my complaints about the arc so far, I do think everything up to this point is at least pretty cool, and follows a fairly natural path forward. But with the confrontation of Shoichi and the reveal that he was working with future Suna the whole time to take Byakuran down, and next it's revealed that, of course, Byakuran knew this the whole time, and that his funeral wreath guards were fakes, and here's the real ones who are way stronger, with Shoichi explaining to Suna the full extent of what the plan has been, and it's something. Shoichi, now being fully exposed as a secret agent, takes the story back 10 years again to his gag arc with Lambo, accidentally blasting himself with the 10-year bazooka and falling into the future, where, by chance, he met Byakuran, a student at the same university Shoichi's future self attended. The time limit passed and he warped back, thinking that was weird as hell, but also was upset at himself that he didn't become a musician like he wanted to when he grew up, changing his path in life to follow down the road of music. And on that road, he meets Byakuran once again, the 10-year younger version from Shoichi's own time. And once they begin to talk, Byakuran has a mental break because he doesn't know who Shoichi is, but he remembers him, almost like a version of himself that met Shoichi at some other point in time. With this, it's revealed that Byakuran's big power is the ability to see across parallel worlds and timelines, him having total control of himself across them all and retaining every memory. Shoichi going to the future once again and seeing that, due to his meeting with two separate versions of Byakuran and helping him awaken that power, he became a ruthless dictator that overthrew the world with Mafia force. And it was all partially due to Shoichi even going to the future in the first place, using the guilt he feels to become Byakuran's right-hand man while secretly plotting with future Suna to bring the past cast forward. Them needing to fight Byakuran here in the 10-year future because he can only be defeated here, apparently. With his master plan being to assemble the 7 Vongala rings, the 7 Mare family rings, a mafia group he had already taken over, and the 7 pacifiers of the Arco Baleno. These 21 objects having the abilities to mess with the space-time continuum, them referred to as the Trenaset, or the 7-3 plan. Their actual purpose not really being revealed until the next arc. But just for reference, the Vongala rings give the ability to travel directly forward in space-time, basically meaning Suna can talk with the former generation's bosses. The Mare rings give their boss the power to see and communicate across multiple timelines, the power Byakuran was born with. And the Arco Baleno pacifiers being a bit different, them locking their holders into a specific place in time, never aging or growing. And this is a lot. Remember when this series was about Mafia family battles before it became a big-ass time-traveling power shonen? That itself is my biggest complaint about all of this. Time travel and parallel worlds are hard concepts to manage in your stories, and I myself am not opposed to them at all. I love this sci-fi shit and how it can deepen a story to insane new levels. But when handled roughly, it can really impact a plot's overall longevity and believability, with Reborn feeling like it kind of falls into that second category. The world never felt like it was crafted to fit all of this insanity into it. Sure, end of the day, it's a power shonen and it's gonna do what it can to constantly raise the stakes. But with this arc taking up almost half of the manga's entire run and raising those stakes over and over, it feels a bit hollow at times, unfortunately, especially with things like, actually, these funeral wreaths were the fake ones and here's the real ones, I picked them them from parallel worlds and they're way stronger, meaning Suna has to get another power-up, the Pokemon-ass animals I mentioned earlier, and they just compounded on the already overloaded plot that had strayed so far from anything resembling Mafia shit. And maybe this is all just my own personal complaints, but when revisiting the series, this is the arc I always look forward to the least. Thankfully, the actual battles themselves against the Vongala and the funeral wreaths are raw as hell, and despite being placed in an arc I overall have rough feelings for, Amano is always drawing the coolest shit possible to elevate those weaker plot aspects to way higher levels. And that's always great. The arc wrapping up with Suna blasting Byakuran away and the gang going back to their time 10 years in the past. And thankfully, picking up the slack I felt with the Milfior arc, and finally going back to Mafia-rooted family battles with the inheritance ceremony and introduction of the Shimon family. And this is where anime content ends, so final spoiler warning here if you want to skip forward. Almost immediately after returning home from the future, Suna, his guardians, and Reborn are summoned to Italy for an inheritance ceremony. The 9th Vongala boss, Suna's grandpa, ready to pass on the title of Decimo down to his grandson, with tons of families gathering together for this big occasion, one being called the Shimon family. After watching Reborn for that second time in 2020, I was getting ready to read the remaining volumes and looking up stuff about the series in general, and across the wiki pages and Reddit threads, one name kept popping up, a character who I hadn't met yet but seemed to be a fan favorite, named Kozato Inma, a supposed frenemy to Suna that was coming into the story soon, with him actually being the leader of the Shimon family. And to my surprise from knowing nothing about him, he's just like Suna, except probably more depressed and self-loathing than our no-good loser main character. The two actually bonding pretty easily and becoming fast friends. The thing is, the Shimon family has a secret objective that's the result of a bloodline feud lasting over 100 years, going back to the days of Vongala Primo, the Shimon boss having seemingly been betrayed by Primo, their family wiped out and creating a long-standing feud between the two groups. The modern-day Shimon here to step up and take revenge on Suna and his guardians, crashing the inheritance ceremony and challenging the Vongala to one-on-one battles similar to the Varia arc from earlier, with Suna having to try and uncover the lost history of Vongalo Primo to find out the truth of this feud, the Guardians fighting off members of the Shimon family, and the mysterious Vendici appearing once again to be the ones hosting this battle, doing it for some unknown reason. The flashback memories of Vongala Primo revealing a Vendici Arco Baleno with a clear pacifier exists, shocking the hell out of Reborn and the crew. The shadowy Mafia figures holding these memories over them as rewards for fighting the one-on-one matches, basically forcing them to fight if they want to learn the truth. With that truth being, one of Vongala Primo's guardians, the Mist user Damon Spade, had actually set up the Shimon family to create this long-lasting feud, with him still being alive all these years later and hopping from body to body so he could keep that rivalry going. And honestly, this feels like a big return to what Reborn should be. The series is a battle shonen, sure, but it was supposed to be, at least to an extent, a Mafia-focused one, and the future arc really just kinda lets that aspect go for most of its length. But now we've got the Shimon family's bloodline hatred for the Vongala that was created by a traitor in the family. The weird-ass Vendici ruling over their fight for reasons they won't explain, and it all tying into the Arco Baleno in an interesting way by connecting them to the Vendici to set up a coming final arc. And all of this right here reminds me why I love Reborn so much. Because when it's firing on all cylinders, it's an extremely cool battle shonen with this smooth Italian flair to it. The art and story mixing together and creating something that, while having the generic shonen tropes, stands on its own as being unlike anything else ever released in Jump. The arc culminating with big power moves and raw design upgrades for Suna, Enma, and the Vongala as a whole. Really like how Suna's Vongala rings represent the elements of the sky, with Suna's ring being the sky itself, and the Shimon rings represent the total opposite, the earth, with Enma's ring, of course, being the earth like Suna's sky. His guardians ruling over the flames of forest, mountain, swamp, glacier, desert, and one that's never revealed because this dude didn't get to do anything. I will say, Talbot as a character is some total bullshit, just an ancient ass Vongala blacksmith who comes out of nowhere to upgrade the rings for more power boosts, and then fucks off once again from the story. That sure is some convenient ass writing. Whatever though, the new gear is cool as hell, so who am I to really be upset? If I do have an actual complaint with this arc, I wish the Shimon family as a whole got more time to do stuff, both in this arc and the next. Enma and Adelheid get plenty of cool moments, and Shit P is a fucking weirdo freak that I really like. But I have nothing for these three dudes. It is what it is, but that's just a thought. This battle, like I had said, sets up the final chapter of Reborn, the curse of the Arco Baleno, Amano finally bringing the rainbow babies of the series front and center into the plot. So one of the biggest and most teased questions of the whole series has to be, what the hell is actually up with Reborn and his baby brethren? Them being 7 badass babies who seem to all be connected to each other in mysterious ways. And with the introduction of Bermuda von Weckenstein, the 8th Arco Baleno of the Vindici who uses an 8th flame type that was unknown to the other babies, the Flame of Night, Reborn finally sits Suna down to reveal that some time ago, him and 6 other people who could all be considered the best at what they did, or were at least uniquely strong compared to the rest of humanity, had been summoned together by a man using the alias Checkerface. Him basically tricking these 7 people into becoming babies for an unknown reason. Each of the 7 having a colored pacifier attached to them when they woke up from his attack. And then going deeper with Bermuda explaining that this is, apparently, a cycle that needs to be repeated throughout time. Reality and life itself needing 7 people to contain the power held in those pacifiers. With the big mic drop that over time as Reborn and the Arco Baleno continued to be locked in these baby states, the pacifiers sucking out their life, they will eventually turn into what the Vindici are. Them actually being corpse-like husks who at one point were former Arco Baleno that protected the pacifiers like the current generation. And now the time has come again to replace the Arco Baleno. Checkerface reappearing to the babies and telling them that they must assemble a team to fight, setting up a multi-round battle royale. Last Arco Baleno standing gets their curse wiped away. Now, obviously, that's a lot of new info to take in at once. And even though these stakes are arguably higher than they were during the Future Arcs battles, I still feel like the Curse of the Rainbow, despite being pretty brief and introducing new major plot developments back to back, is a fantastic final arc in my opinion. Well, a fantastic idea for a final arc. The execution can be a little rocky at points. The biggest mystery and one of the most engaging things in the whole series plot is wanting to know what's up with Reborn, Colonello, Mammon, the whole Arco crew, and Amano taking the cool-ass Vindici who first appear in like volume 9 and making them these big player final bosses just adds to the already interesting plot ideas here at the end. And to go a step further, forcing each of the Arco Baleno to form teams that will battle in their name makes them draw from literally the entire cast, setting up potential fights across the teams for almost any character you could think of, leading to matchups like Suna taking on his dad Iemetsu, who despite not being around for much of the series, is actually the leader of SEDEF, the Confluenza Esterna de la Familia, an advisor group to the Vongala that serves under the 9th boss. And dude, this shit rules! Getting cool team matchups that are made of the entire cast had me peaking with hype. The Arco Baleno able to bust off their curse for a little bit of each match and seeing them in full adult action. No lies to tell, I had a big ass smile on my whole face for a large chunk of these chapters. But on the flip side, the arc itself moves fast, barely filling 6 volumes worth of chapters for the large scale setup it's created. And unfortunately, this means that despite there being cool team matchups, a lot of those fights get glazed over to focus more on Suna and Reborn's team. Which, yeah, I get it, they're the main characters, but come on man, shots like this are too hyped to not really do anything with. Anyway, this setup aside, the briefness of the arc rushes the battle royale forward and eventually just abandons the whole idea in general, instead having the whole cast team up to fight against Bermuda and Checkerface by extension, knowing that if either of them win, the current Arco Baleno will be wiped out, meaning Reborn would become a Vindici and never see Suna again. The tutor for the first time turning to his student and asking him for help. From start to now, Reborn has always been Suna's ace in the hole, his calm-headed face-slapping mentor that guided him through each arc in one way or another. But now here at the end, their enemy is way too strong for even Reborn to handle, and likely so for Suna as well. But like a true shonen protag, Suna doesn't give a shit. Reborn was the person who blew his way into Suna's daily life, and despite their wacky adventures and big battles, has helped improve all of it for the better. The duo becoming close after all of this time spent together. And even if it means the end of existence itself, Suna is gonna fight for his friend, the thing he's done the whole series, the thing Vongala Primo would have done. And this is one of those moments that shines so bright to me that it can really overpower the weaker aspects of this arc. And even if shortly after this the battles kinda wrap up in very quick succession, the reason for the fighting is strong enough in my eyes that I think it makes the final match against Bermuda and his Vindici really enjoyable. Oh, except Bermuda's full power design sucks ass. I hate this fucking dipshit. How you gonna go from Zanzis to Byakuran to Damon to this goober? As the big battle is popping off, Suna gets shot in the head by a dying will bullet. The bullets from the start of the series, back in the early gag chapter days. And where he used to blast himself out of his own clothes, he now reborns out of his whole ass skin. The flames and expression on his face being just like the ones from way back, taking the experiences he's built up from the entire series and using them to beat down Bermuda with only willpower. No Vongala gear or rings needed. And bro, let me tell ya, I popped off so hard during this moment. Going back to the basics for a final battle is literally always the coldest shit, and this right here got me going. With this big battle wrapping up and Checkerface appearing to do whatever it is he do, randomly, that Talbot dude from earlier just walks back up and goes, "Oh, actually I fixed the pacifiers now and you don't have to sacrifice people anymore, so the curse stops here." With Checkerface going, "Hell yeah dude, sounds sick. I can't age you guys back up though, so the babies will have to grow up normally from here on out. Later." And that's it! Big battle over, problem solved, I guess. Is it perfect writing? Nah, but who cares? That's pretty funny, so it's fine with me. So all of this has been to say, Reborn's plot, at least in my opinion, is far from perfect. It forgets about its Mafia setup over and over. The power scaling gets weird and all over the place. Some fights are kind of boring overall. And the resolution to the story is so abrupt and out of left field with Talbot that I can't just sit here and say I think it's flawless. But at the same time, the art is just so beautiful, the characters are so cool and fun, and when the fighting is going at full speed, it's effortlessly raw and totally unique from all of its shonen counterparts. I have seen major complaints about the ending itself online, Suna returning to daily life and not only refusing to pick between one of the two love interests, but also refusing to be the 10th boss yet again. Reborn going, alright then dipshit, I'm leaving, before literally coming right back and saying, okay hang on, you ain't gotta be the 10th boss, what if instead you're the Neo Vongala Primo, eh? The duo going right back to how they were in the early chapters. All of this meaning that Suna has technically made no progress into not being a loser, which upset a lot of the fans. Personally, I kinda enjoy this ending. Yeah, Suna is basically back at square one, but like he himself says, he's not alone anymore. Sure, he can be a wimpy loser, he's too timid and overly clumsy. But now the bad moments are way less important because he shares so many good ones with his friends, his Vongala family. I think a lot of shonen battle fans look for deepness a bit too much in these series, judging them almost totally based on how much a protagonist has suffered or changed since the start. And while there ain't shit wrong with those types of stories or writing, I got a Tokyo Ghoul video that says exactly that. It's not required to make a shonen series good. Not everything has to be deep or moving. It just needs to be solid, it just needs to be cool, and like any good shonen, still lighthearted, which in my eyes, Reborn not only nails those feelings, it knocks them out of the fucking park. 9 out of 10 to me, dude, flaws and all. Alright, with all of that out of the way, I want to talk about what Amano's been up to since the ending of Reborn. And in the over 10 years since wrapping up, she's had 2 other major series. The first being called Eldive, following a story of a young boy who ends up going on big space adventures with a galactic police agency. And while I've actually only read a few chapters of this one, it's pretty interesting. Mainly if anything because of the fact it was made to push Shonen Jump's first digital manga app, Jump Live, before it was eventually shut down and the series finishing in Jump Plus. But due to its originally all-digital nature, it's actually completely full color. Amano taking one of my biggest praises in Reborn, the color art, and turning it into a whole ass series. It has a full translation from Viz that can be found online in tons of places. Also having an anime that covers some of the series that seems fine, but when it comes to Amano's art, I'd recommend the manga personally. After the ending of Eldive, a few years later she began her currently running series, Ron Kamonohashi Deranged Detective, following a literal Suna clone who works as a police officer, him needing to team up with a private detective who has a deep obsession with solving mysteries. The named character, Ron Kamonohashi, him living in a totally empty room isolated from the world to avoid the potential whiff of a mystery, knowing if his brain walked onto one, he would lose his mind over it. I only read the first 2 chapters when it launched back in 2020 and decided right then I was more than down with it and would come back around when Amano wraps it up. And just like with her other series, this one also has an anime adaptation, the first season ending in 2023 and immediately announcing season 2 for later this year. So keep an eye out for this one, I think it has potential to be peak. Thank you for watching and all of that usual shit. Shout out the patrons and hit the buttons below. Despite my issues and complaints with parts of the series, I love the shit out of Reborn and can't recommend it enough. Even if unfortunately, there's really no solid way to totally experience the series. Is what it is, I guess, at least it has scans. There's some cool ass manga out there that will likely never be fully translated. See you next time for whatever's next, probably hopefully something shorter, maybe, possibly. Later!